Is there anything more annoying than going to the simulacrum to showcase a build and having your pet outshine you? Well, anyway guys, I'm just Haley, and today we're going to be showcasing the Jade build that I've been working on. Been having a lot of fun with it, honestly, and as you can see here, there's not really much point in showcasing it in the simulacrum. It doesn't really do much there that a pet can't do, so let's showcase it in actual missions and stuff. We're gonna get right into everything, and Jade has been a really fun frame for me to kind of experiment with for just a little bit here, and do some, pretty heavy testing, trying to figure out what I did and didn't like in missions. The build you're actually going to be seeing today, there's going to be two different ones, and both of them have been pretty heavily tested. I am actually recommending a slightly different version than the one you're seeing in the gameplay here, especially after this gameplay testing, just how it felt and some of the inconsistencies in it, shoring those up. But I already had the longer gameplay here for it, so I just wanted to showcase this for you and give you the option as like this is another option too, right? Anyway, if you guys like the build, if you guys like the content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps me out a ton, but other than that, let's get right into things. So let's first talk about Subsumes, and obviously Subsumes can go on any of our abilities, but realistically, Light's Judgment is the only ability that really makes sense to Subsume. Symphony of Mercy is all of your supports and your really crazy buffs. That would be kind of absurd. Ephenomize is a slow, which feels really comfortable, but also the armor strip, which again is insanely good. And then obviously we're building around her 4, so you want to make sure you keep your glory on high. Those are all really, really essential abilities to this kit. Unless you're doing some other kind of crazy build, which is not what we're focusing on here, I'm keeping those abilities. So Light's Judgment becomes the only thing we could subsume if we want to. I personally choose to because I don't build a ton of range and I really want to benefit from those, the utility and all the support that she can offer a team as well as herself. Honestly, the power strength that she can give and the weapon damage that she can give is nothing to sleep on. It's very, very, very strong buffs, and there's a lot of things you can do to kind of maximize those buffs too. So personally, I'm getting rid of Light's Judgment in favor of my two favorite subsumes, which are, as you can see in the gameplay currently, Nourish is one of them, but my actual personal favorite is Roar. Now Nourish is going to help with energy, which is really neat, but the big thing it's going to do is allow you to prime viral really easily with your modding. I'm also using Arcane Enervate here to get some extra crits and extra damage out, which does feel pretty good. Overall, those two subsumes, Roar and Nourish, are also going to be really good buffs for your team, especially because you're running so much power strength in these builds. So what we're going to be doing here mostly is going to be stacking as much power strength as we can, so then those buffs from Roar and Nourish become even stronger, even more beneficial, not just to Jade, but to the team. And that's a really, really good feature of how she works, and it's something that I really wanted to capitalize with this build to make sure that she really was that elite air support that she could become with those crazy buffs and all the utility, as well as still packing a good bit of damage for herself, and you're going to see that in both of the builds that we're showcasing today. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going Growing Power. I just feel like it's the best option for her. It's very, very strong. I wasn't running that in this gameplay, but honestly, Brave Respite is so useless in most cases for her because I'm not going to be using anything quick to get shields back unless it's Nourish. Kind of didn't make a lot of sense to run. Growing Power is going to give us more buffs, more power strength, more better. Continuity is going to help with our drain over time. We're going with a neutral range here, though we can technically flex that out if we want to drop the Rolling Guard or the Fast Deflection. It's up to you. Aerodynamic Aviator and then her passive from her 4. It's going to be a nice way to get some tankiness into our shields on top of the 50% base damage reduction on shields. All that's going to feel really good. For the most part, if you ever do take damage and your shields go away, it's really easy to swap up to a shield regen from her 2, and that's going to give, in combination with Fast Deflection, really, really quick and convenient shield regen. Honestly, I felt pretty immortal with that, so that was pretty simple to do. Unless you pretty much stood still and went kind of AFK, enemies couldn't really take down your shield, especially if you were at least a little bit mobile in the air. We want as much power strength as we can crank into this, so we are going to be going Transient Fortitude, Blind Rage, and Umbral Intensify here. Then Archon Vitality is going to be doubling those heat procs that we get from the Glory as it goes off. Prime Flow for energy, Multi-Augmented, more power strength, more better, and then Arcane Velocity. I wasn't running in the clips here, but I did really, really miss it in this gameplay for Enervate. It feels a lot better when your glory goes a lot faster, so maxing out on that attack speed is going to be absolutely essential to really making Jade function as that weapon platform. However, If you wanted to do something a little bit more tanky, a little bit more brainless, a little bit more supportive, you could go for instead the Aegis build, which is actually what I'm running here. Makes your tanking a little bit more brainless with this Nourish build, but it is going to sacrifice a lot of that damage from Glory. So that's really up to you how you want to run that. I personally didn't like it because I felt as though it weakened Jade a little too much, but her power strength is still pretty good, so you're still going to get sizable buffs out for the party. It's just up to you whether or not that's something that you want to go for, or if you want to prioritize your Glory being able to really rip through enemies. As you can see in the gameplay, I also opted for Prime Redirection. I felt like that was a little overkill and a little excessive. I didn't think it was that necessary. Instead, I swapped that out for the Rolling Guard, which I felt was a little bit more, oh crap, my shields are out, kind of when her survivability was at all in question. That would have been a lot better for her, especially for things like Acolytes if she ever gets pulled out of her 4. Having that option to Rolling Guard and then take care of an Acolyte is absolutely, I think, luxury, but really, really nice. Just for the few times that this build ever did become a little bit questionable, that's going to give you an answer to that, and that feels really good. I like having answers to questions in missions. Just the more answers you have, the more brainless you can make a build be, and that's always going to feel really good to me. But I did mention Glory, so let's talk about how we mod Glory for this Enervate build. And the way we do that is, like I said, with as much attack speed as possible. So we want Gunslinger, Lethal Torrent, and Anemic Agility, all for as much attack speed as possible. I also really, really value as much crit damage as possible, so Merciless Gunfight, Magnetic Might, and Target Cracker are all going to be in here too. Then you go Galvanized Diffusion just to be able to stack up that multi-shot so you can put out more shots. It's going to be good as well because it's going to proc that Judgment, which will help keep your 2 on as long of a duration as possible. Can be a little bit hard with Enervate because it does tend to kill things before you can really get the Judgment out, so keep that in mind. If you want to go for a little bit more range, then that's always going to be an option too, maybe instead of the Rolling Guard. I just, again, like it for the luxury. And then Heated Charge, we really want to stack up that heat, so we're weighting that heat much higher. Leave the momentum just for the projectiles to fly a little bit faster is more luxury, but it does feel really good. Obviously, Enervate, because we're building for Enervate, it's going to feel really good, especially with that high fire rate. You're going to rip through Acolytes, you're going to rip through enemies all very, very easily. And it's going to make you feel very, very comfortable on Jade. She's just a very strong frame when you can synergize all of that together. So let's talk about Enervate, the good and the bad. So the good for Enervate is that it's going to help you with damage attenuation targets, specifically Acolytes. It's also going to be really good single target damage, which is going to allow you to build a little bit less range because you don't need as much AoE here. Now there is a downside to that, is that you are not proccing as many Judgment, which means you are not extending the duration of her 2, which is increasing energy cost, but we're solving that with Nourish, so we don't really care. Enervate, though, is going to add 10% crit chance every time she uses her Glory, every time she shoots. And what that's going to do is it's going to escalate her crit chance up to those yellows and oranges, despite not building crit, which is really nice. What that's going to end up meaning is that as you continue to escalate that crit, you can just build crit damage instead of ever having to build crit chance into your weapon. It's going to feel really nice, really comfortable, and really rewarding because you're getting multiple mods worth the value of crit chance for the cost of 1 Arcane. Now that sounds really nice, and it very much is. It works really, really well in Acolytes, again, very well in damage attenuation targets, but there is a downside to this, and it's that mostly we're not using another option that is so good on her and really does solve one of her biggest issues that she tends to have if you don't want to have to think about how you're surviving, and that's Fortifier. Now, Fortifier is a really, really cool option because whenever there's an enemy with Overguard, those tend to be your tankier enemies anyway, so being able to handle them not only faster because you're going to be hitting them significantly harder, but also being able to turn their Overguard into your survivability feels so good, and it makes her survivability so much less of a question, especially when missions go on. Now there's 2 things that we can do for that. We can keep that Rolling Guard if we want to do that, but also we can go with that Fortifier. Now if we go Fortifier, that's going to change a bit of the build, and it is going to make Nourish feel a little less important than something like Roar. So let's see what that looks like. And what better way to start that than by showing you what it looks like against probably its worst matchup, which is damage attenuation, i.e. Acolytes. Now you can still, very obviously, take care of acolytes pretty easily. It doesn't really take that much, just a little bit better positioning. You can slow them down because of a Phantomize, you rip through them because you're using a ton of damage and fire rate, so they're just going to die, get whittled down. It's very easy. If you're running with a team, it's going to be easy as well. You're going to rip their armor off, and a teammate can come by and murder them if they are a little bit faster than you are, but they're going to die over time. It's not really going to matter. It's very simple. This build is a lot faster, a lot more power strength, a lot more zippy because you don't really need to focus on targets kind of at all, and your fire rate goes absolutely insane with all of this. It's going to be similar to the other one once you change some of the things like adding in velocity, but overall what this is going to end up doing is it's going to give you the ability to rip through Overguard and again turn that into your own personal Overguard gating, which is going to feel really, really nice for Jade. It's also going to allow you to go higher on your power strength because of how she gets to run this. She doesn't have to worry about survivability as much, and you literally never really need to go into your shield, so that means you can do some really fun tech with Jade and snapshot some of that stuff, but I'm going to get to that after we talk about the build, so let's pull the build up now for you. Now obviously, as mentioned, we're going to be using Roar here, and the rest of this is going to look pretty similar. So we're going to be able to run Stretch because, again, we can run a little bit extra range here. It's a really nice extra luxury we get. We're going to, again, be going Velocity and Augmented. Now we get to go Augur Secrets. That's going to feel really, really nice here, mostly because more power strength is going to feel really nice. You could instead substitute that out for Rolling Guard if you wanted to, but you don't typically need it because most of the time the only enemies that are really going to matter for doing damage to you are going to be ones with Overguard, and those are pretty easy to take care of anyway, so who really cares? The rest of this is all pretty much the same. We're going to be going Continuity because the extra duration is going to help with everything that we really want. It's also going to help with our Roar and with our Phantomize, so that's really good. More power strength, more better, growing power, aerodynamic, aviator, all that stays the same. The main thing that we're going to be shifting up is going to be our Glory, because our Glory is going to be running our Fortifier. Now we're going to be going Fortifier with this. We're also going to be going with a Viral setup instead of what we were running before. So I like Viral here because it allows us to proc our own Viral since we're not running Nourish, right? It's pretty nice. Still waiting really heavily with Heat. Radiation is only here because Accelerated Isotope gives us more attack speed. That attack speed genuinely feels so good. Please don't sleep on it. It makes Glory feel like such a strong weapon. You can already see just how it mows down things. And how she works is she's going to be snapshotting as much as she can, and the reason that this works really, really well is because you don't really ever have to change her 2. And every time, if you don't know, you cycle her 2, you lose the snapshotted buffs that you might have. What that means is that if you were snapshotting yourself at, let's just say, having a Matter Eye power strength buff, and then having some other level of power strength buffs, whether that's from the Grimoire, from a teammate's buff, from a relic buff, any of that kind of stuff, those buffs go away whenever you cycle your 2. You can go check that for yourself. It counts as recasting the ability, even if you're not actually recasting the ability. What that means is that you are going to most benefit specifically from being able to keep up one of those buffs for the longest period of time. If you want a selfish, glory-focused buff, pretty much playing Pregnant Titania, what you're going to want to do is keep your weapon damage buff up. That's why we don't run Hornet Strike on Glory, by the way. And when you keep that weapon damage buff, you're going to get as much damage as possible into that. It's going to feel very, very good, mostly because you can snapshot the power strength into your Glory on high whenever you use it. And that's going to feel really, really nice. You don't need to continue to, recast that or anything like that. You pretty much just stay in the form and you're good to go. And then keeping the weapon damage buff up means you get to snapshot that at your highest value power strength. So you can see here I'm over 500% weapon damage buff in this mission, and it feels so good. This also of course means that if you get things like relic buffs, you can snapshot those in and not having to worry about swapping to that shield to get your shield regeneration, because you have Fortifier in your back pocket, is always going to feel so good for those brainless, crazy strong buffs. So starting off with what the first thing that I think is the easiest to bring in Snapshot is going to be your 40% for a Matter Eye. It's going to be very easy to do. You just need Chain Sling. So all that means is you Void Mode, Sling Dash, and then Sling Dash one more time. You can literally go forward backwards, and you're going to get 40% power strength that you can then use to cast your power strength buff with your 2. And then you would use that to then cast her 4. That's going to cast the highest power strength that you can get without adding in more variables. If you want to use a Grimoire for another 60%, I actually do that a lot and I think it's pretty fun. However, it is going to cost you your secondary if you want to do that, so that's up to you. The other thing that we're doing here, and the other way that we're getting a little bit more power strength here, is we are using the Amalgam Furax mod. Amalgam Furax body count is going to be a really good mod just to give you 45% fire rate to your secondary weapons. Now you don't need to worry about this too much. You can literally buy the MK1 Furax and then just throw that model in. You're going to be good to go. You're going to get all the value you want out of it. You could also build it for a slam build. It's going to be pretty easy to slot it in there, or an influence build. Works really well with that too, with the Arcane. Up to you how you want to run that, but I think it's pretty strong, so that's up to you. The other things that you can snapshot, though, if you actually wanted to go talk about actual snapshotting, are going to be things like teammate buffs. So any teammates that are buffing your power strength, whether that's other Jades, whether that's a Nidus, whether it's a Nidus Spectre that you bring, all of those will snapshot and increase your power strength. The other thing we're using to increase power strength are shards, and the shards are here. We're using 2 ability strength shards and 2 equilibrium shards. 1 cast speed shard is just going to be for convenience, but you could also go for more power strength there if you wanted to. That's really up to you. Overall, the 2 equilibrium felt way more comfy to me than 1 equilibrium, but I could technically get by in the first 2-hour survival that I did with her with just the 1 equilibrium, but I felt safer, more comfy, and it felt a lot easier to maintain my energy surplus with 2. So personally, I'm going with 2, but it's up to you. If you're a little more, I guess, risque than I am, you could definitely just go with 1. When it comes down to it, the ability to snapshot is something you can do with Jade, but you certainly don't need to. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It does help her get a lot of power strength, a lot of weapon damage, just a lot of general buffs to her teammates. That's what this build was kind of centered around. I wanted to be as functional as possible with Glory to really rip things apart, while still bringing the maximum number of buffs to teammates that I could, especially because those buffs are affinity range, and that's going to feel really, really nice. And then especially when you can kind of carry your own, not just from survivability, but also from the fact that you can dish out a pretty good amount of damage and get really decent kill count. I was averaging somewhere around like 160, 170 kills per minute, depending on how much I was really trying in the missions that I did. So that was pretty nice. It was pretty convenient. It also kind of depended on how much I was trying to show off on the build or whatever, but that's always going to be worth mentioning for just how you want to play. I think she's a really strong, really solid frame. Keep your Aurora up for the extra damage. Keep your buffs going for however you want to run them. Keep in mind that you could just go for a power strength buff here. It won't mean that your Glory will do as much damage, but it will be giving your friends, your teammates, up to 150% power strength, which is going to feel really nice. And then the last thing that I want to showcase to you guys is just show you the build that I was using for the Taxon for this. Now, Taxon is my preference for a pet, for a Sentinel. I just think it's really, really good. You can use it for shield gating really, really easily if you wanted to, but I actually don't have the shield gate mod from the Taxon specifically on this build. This is what I like to call my murderous Taxon. For this, you can choose to sub out what you want, but the things that you are going to need are going to be Assault Mode, Manifold Bond, Momentous Bond, Contagious Bond, and Fired Up. Those are going to be the main things that you want, and then I guess Prime Regen as well, just to make sure you get it back as quick as possible. Those are going to be the really, really big key points. Synth Deconstruct is also just such a convenient option to have that I think it's really worth it. I was able to actually almost keep up with an Explosive Legerdman Mirage in an ESO, just using my Taxon with this Murderous build, and the Verglas build is honestly just set up for as much heat viral as you can get, some good status chance, status damage, and then a ton of multi-shot. And that works really, really well to allow it to do a solid amount of damage. The fire rate and punch through coming from your Rifle Elementalist and your Vile Acceleration for this. So what that ends up doing is it allows you to spread out statuses that are going to cascade through enemies, dishing out a ton of damage. Prime Animal Instinct is optional, but I like it because it tells me where to go to get more enemies. That's a really important thing, especially when you are doing a very high movement build, and when you're able to go across as much distance as you are, like you can with Jade. And that really does bring us to the end of this build for Jade. I know it was 2 builds, and it was a pretty long video for that, so I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, again, please remember, like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff helps me out a ton for that YouTube algorithm. Please praise be to the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. Honestly, after doing all the testing for this build, I came away with a new appreciation for Jade that I didn't expect to have. This has been a build that had been requested a bunch going into it, and it was one that I wanted to revisit, and I kept putting her on the back burner and kicking her back and you know, don't kick a pregnant lady, I guess, because who would have thought that I would come away with honestly really liking this build. Like I said, I chose to take it into ETA this past week, and I think I still had Haro as an option, and I have a pretty good build for Haro too, so I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but you know, who would have thought? Anyway, guys, I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys do too. If you do, please let me know in the comments what you guys think. As always, I've been just Haley, you've been just amazing, and until next time, remember, I love your faces. Bye-bye.